Shout out to G-Man Boxing.
Alright people, review of the week time. So, plenty of stuff to talk about in this video. We're just going to touch base. We're going to start with the DAZN card that happened last night in Abu Dhabi. I originally thought it was in Saudi Arabia, it was actually in Abu Dhabi. Good card. Now, the atmosphere in the stadium, to be fair, was pretty dead. You know, the atmosphere wasn't exactly the most lively. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I wouldn't be the biggest drinker of alcohol, but I do know that when you have a lot of boxing fans with alcohol present, you tend to get a more lively atmosphere. You just do, it's just the way it is. I think that's probably the way it was last night. It wasn't the most lively atmosphere in there. But in terms of the undercard, you know, I thought it wasn't a bad undercard at all. We'll talk about Zelfa Barrett versus Rakhimov. Now, it was weird, right? So, going into this fight, I was picking Rakhimov to win the fight. And obviously he won it. I think it was a 9th or 10th round stoppage. But it was a strange old fight. It was a really, really strange one because I've watched Zelfa Barrett for many, many years now at this stage. And I always felt he was, how do I say it? He was above British level, I felt, but not much above it, if you know what I mean. So I always felt that he'd plateau at European level. And I think when he beat Eric Donovan, that was kind of where he was at, because he struggled a lot in that fight. And Donovan is a European level fighter. He actually retired this week, credit to him. But that's kind of where I felt Zelfa Barrett was. And when he fought Kiko Martinez, I think that was on the Warrington Lara undercard, the first fight, I felt he was very fortunate to get that nod, to be honest with you. You know, Kiko Martinez pressured very effectively in that fight, and you could tell that Zelfa Barrett really wasn't enjoying it. He wasn't enjoying having someone in there who could pressure him, and as I said, he was very fortunate to get the nod in that fight. The scorecards were absolutely horrendous for that fight. It was a close fight, don't get me wrong. No problem with someone saying Zelfa Barrett won it, but I think they were like 118, 110 or 170, 111, crazy scorecards. It wasn't like that at all. So I always kind of felt like that was the level Zelfa Barrett was at. And to struggle so much with Kiko Martinez, who really is, his best days were at super bantamweight, never mind super featherweight. So I kind of felt that going into this fight, Zelfa Barrett, Rakhimov wouldn't have too much trouble with him. Well, Zelfa Barrett, he performed better than I've ever seen him. He had Rakhimov down, I think it was in the 3rd round. And he was winning this fight, you know, going into the round, I think it was the 9th round where he got stopped. He was winning the fight, you know. He seemed to be able to just land almost at will with uppercuts. He was just, every aspect of this fight, he seemed significantly better. And I was looking at Rakhimov thinking, I expected more from Rakhimov. I thought he was better than this. Or maybe I was underestimating Zelfa Barrett, one or the other. But as the fight progressed, the pressure of Rakhimov did start to tell. Now, originally I felt as though it was an injury, because Zelfa Barrett seemed to capitulate fairly quickly. And I was kind of looking at it, and I think when he went down the first time, I was looking at his leg and thinking, okay, did he twist his ankle? Did he blow his knee out? But it didn't look like that. And I actually thought he was looking at his knee when he got up from the first knockdown. I was like, there's an injury there. There has to be, because it just seemed so out of context almost with the way the fight was going, and it didn't look like any significant shot landed. But a few people were saying, no, it was legitimate. It was, Zelfa Barrett was just, you know, the pressure told, and he just ended up, you know, getting buzzed and his legs were gone. So I haven't heard anything from the time recording this if it was an injury, which originally at the time I thought it was an injury, but a few people are telling me now that no, it was just that he was just genuinely buzzed and concussed. And what I mean by concussed, he might have very well been concussed, but you know what I mean, in terms of just his legs were gone, his equilibrium was gone, and that was it. You know, Pat Barrett was on the ring apron with a towel before the referee stopped it anyway. It was a very, very strange one, because this was a fight which Zelfa Barrett was, in my opinion, comfortably ahead. You know, very comfy ahead, and Rakhimov was able to pull it out of the bag. It was, again, as I said, it was a very strange fight to look at. You know, in terms of you were seeing Zelfa Barrett do everything right and still end up losing. In terms of Rakhimov, well, he's going to make a title defense against Joe Cordina next. In my opinion, Joe Cordina should never have been stripped. The fact of the matter is, he was injured. He had a legit injury. He was only champion for a short period of time. That's the whole point of having an interim title, is when the current champion can't defend due to an injury. But obviously the IBF make it up as they go along, like they all do, truth be told. So Cordina is going to fight Rakhimov next. Based upon what I saw there last night, Joe Cordina isn't going to have too much trouble with Rakhimov. I mean, I never really was massively high on Joe Cordina, but from what I saw from Rakhimov last night, yeah, Joe Cordina is better than Rakhimov. He might not stop him, but he's definitely going to be able to outbox him, and I think he'll be able to withstand the pressure of Rakhimov. In terms of the other fight, Chantel Cameron obviously beat Jessica McCaskill. Very, 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 very poor from Jessica McCaskill. That's probably the worst I've ever seen her. She looked absolutely horrific in that fight. She really did. Her timing was off. Everything just looked awful for McCaskill in that fight. And, you know, Chantel Cameron did what she needed to do. She got the win. She's undisputed now at 140 pounds. But, yeah, McCaskill really looked terrible. Absolutely awful. I never seen her look as bad. Even against Katie Taylor, she looked better than that. She looked awful in there against Chantel Cameron. I don't know what it was. Everything, timing, everything was off. And of course, then we go into the main event, which we're going to talk about a little bit at depth right now. So in the main event, we obviously saw Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez go in there against Dmitry Bivol, and it was not the fight I expected, to say the least. You know, I really did expect a tougher fight for Dmitry Bivol than what we got. In reality, Canelo Alvarez gave Bivol a much tougher fight than Zurdo Ramirez did. It's a strange one, you know. I spoke in the preview about Dmitry Bivol's punching power, and I said that when he fought Joe Smith Jr., now Joe Smith Jr. would be more a come forward pressure fighter. You know, Zurdo is as well, but Zurdo can box as well when he wants to, and he did at the start of this fight, and he had a bit of success, truth be told. But Joe Smith Jr. said that in that fight with Dmitry Bivol, he struggled because he felt the power of Bivol early on, and it made him quite reluctant to really go and apply the pressure. You know, and I get the impression that this is exactly what happened to Gilberto Ramirez as well. He had success early on boxing. You know, he has got the reach. He had the height, but he didn't use it. You know, as I said, he tends to crouch a little bit, lean forward with his chin down a bit, and tends to give away that height. So essentially, if he's 6'2", when he's in the ring, with the way he fights, like kind of hunching down a bit, he's essentially 6 foot. He's essentially meeting Dmitry Bivol at his level. After Dmitry Bivol got his range, it was just like, right, well, there's no plan B. So that was kind of how it was. And Gilberto Ramirez, his corner, they were trying to get him to really exert himself. They were saying, you know, leave it in the ring. You're the guy. He doesn't like it when you get him against the ropes. But it was almost like the corner were trying to cheerlead him. It was kind of like they had no plan B. It was almost like, you know, crap, he's outboxing us now. Right, just try and rile him up and see what we can do. That's kind of how it seemed. And Ramirez, I suspect he felt Bivol's power, and he kind of thought to himself, do you know what, I'd rather lose this fight on points than really go for it and risk getting, you know, laid out on the canvas. Because I think if he had gone for it, I mean, it's impossible to say, but likelihood is he would have ended up getting clipped and getting caught and maybe getting taken out of there, because it was a tremendous performance by Dmitry Bivol. He seemed to have those, you know, the second and third round where he really, he didn't lose those rounds by a massive amount, but he lost them. And then he just seemed to just find his range, Lomachenko-esque almost. It was kind of like, you know, downloading the opponent for the first few rounds, download, complete, right, I got you now. That's kind of how it was. And tremendous performance by Dmitry Bivol. He mentioned that he wants undisputed, and, you know, him against Artur Beterbiev is just tremendous. You know, just that fight right there, speed, movement, reflexes, tremendous defense against tremendous pressure. You know, Beterbiev can box too, punching power. You know, you just cannot, it's right up there. You know, I would have to say right now in boxing, 3 fights I want to see. Spence Crawford, number 1. That's going to be number 1. That's always going to be number 1. Probably, definitely Fury versus Usyk. I want to see undisputed. Followed by, it's a tie-up between Wilder Joshua and Bivol versus Beterbiev. They're kind of both in that number 3 kind of fight I want to see bracket, because I think that's a tremendous fight. I really do. I'd be favouring Bivol for a few reasons, not just the stylistic point of view, but I also think that Bivol is a lot more fresh. You know, he's really taken no abuse in his career at all. You know, he's won all his fights fairly convincingly. You know, even though he's been going the rounds, he's been winning all the rounds, or majority of the rounds anyway. Beterbiev, the hardest fight of his career, I would say, would have been the Callum Johnson fight. Even though he won it in 4 rounds, he had to come through adversity in that fight. He was dropped. He was hurt very bad by Callum Johnson in that fight. And I just feel as though Beterbiev, as much as I love watching him, and as much as I think he's brilliant, injuries, I'm kind of wondering, are they starting to pile up now? He's 37 going on 38. Campaigning at light heavyweight when he campaigned at heavyweight as an amateur. I do wonder, Beterbiev is the sort of fighter where it wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility for him to just age overnight. You know, he could fight Anthony Yarde in January. He could look devastating. He could iron Yarde out. He could look, every bit as good as he is. You let maybe 8-9 months go and just, that's it. I wonder, is he in that kind of category now where it's just, you just don't know what'll happen. Will the injuries pile up? Will, the years he's been fighting amateur and pro pile up? He's at that age where you just, you can't really know. And I wonder, would that happen to Beterbiev? Now, I could be wrong. I'd love to see both guys, firing on all cylinders and go in there and just, it would be fantastic. It'd be fantastic. It really would. It'd be a great fight. As I said, I'd favour Bivol right now, but you never know. I mean, he could go in there against Anthony Yarde. He could absolutely walk straight through Anthony Yarde, which I wouldn't rule out. I think Yarde versus Beterbiev is a good fight. I wouldn't rule out Beterbiev just going in there and steamrolling Anthony Yarde, truth be told, because timing is everything, is something Tunde said a lot. But with Kovalev, you could see that the timing, even though he had a good fight against Alvarez, a later Alvarez, prior to Yarde, you could tell that Kovalev had seen better days. With Beterbiev, you just don't know. Has he seen better days? Possibly, but I don't think he's where Kovalev was when he fought Yarde. And Kovalev, look what he was able to do. And, Beterbiev is a lot more aggressive. Probably hits a bit harder, truth be told, than Sergey Kovalev. I'd say he probably does, to be honest with you. I'd say he's probably one of the hardest punchers in boxing, pound for pound. He's relentless. He pressures a lot better than Kovalev does. Kovalev was more a boxer when he fought Yarde. And I think I can't see how Yarde wins it, really. I can see how he makes it competitive, but I can't see how he wins it. I really can't. I can see him getting absolutely laid out against Artur Beterbiev. I really can. So that was pretty much the fight that happened last night. In terms of moving forward with some of the news, obviously I broke this news on Wednesday evening, actually uploaded Thursday morning, but Chris Eubank Jr., his next fight is reported to take place on December 17th, possibly early 2023, but more than likely I would say December 17th against Liam Smith. I think that's a fine fight. I have no issue whatsoever with that fight. I think it's brilliant. I think stylistically Liam Smith does play into Eubank Jr.'s strengths, but I think he's more live than an Arthur Abraham. I think that he's better than Nick Blackwell. He's better than Yildirim. Those kind of guys, Spike O'Sullivan, etc. I think he's better at applying pressure than those guys. I do look. The only people he's lost to have been Alvarez, Canelo, and Munguia. He obviously lost to that Russian guy whose name I can't remember, but in my opinion, Liam Smith won that fight. He did. I felt Liam Smith won. I thought he was very unlucky not to get the nod in that fight, realistically. So Liam Smith's only ever lost to quality operators, or he's lost a very disputed decision. So I think that this is a good fight. The styles should gel together well. Eubank Jr. is on the crest of a wave. Even without doing anything, he's on the crest of a wave because a lot of people have sympathy for him with the whole Conor Benn debacle. And I think that Sauerland, Sky, they would be wise to make hay while the sun shines. I obviously spoke about Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall being talked about on Sky pay-per-view of all that, in February next year. And I don't see that as being a pay-per-view fight. It's really not. But Sky should have made hay while the sun shines with that fight, because I don't think it would have been pay-per-view regardless when it happens. But it might have done better if they'd done it in the summer rather than now. Because right now, I say now, February of next year, because by then, most people would have forgotten about it. It's not really news anymore. And, in the summer, just gone, it would have still been fresh in people's mind. It would have been a great time to get it over the line. And it would have been a great time to do it. Now, I don't know. I just think that it's just too little too late. And I think that whatever pull it had is not going to be there. And at the end of the day, with Josh Taylor, I think he'll beat Jack Catterall. I think there's a lot more from Josh Taylor than what we've seen on that night. I think it's a case of Josh Taylor having his worst performance with Jack Catterall having his best. I see it similar to the Charlo Castano thing, their fight, because I felt that Charlo would win the rematch, which he did by knockout, because Castano gave his all and it wasn't enough, and Charlo looked terrible in that fight. And I felt that if you do that again, and you've a better Charlo and the same Castano, regardless, Charlo would win. And I feel as though if you get the best Jack Catterall and the best Josh Taylor, the best Josh Taylor is much better, and he should win. Say should. You never know. The longer this fight goes in terms of how long we leave it, the more it does tend to favour Jack Catterall, because Josh Taylor's made no secret of the fact that he struggled to get to 140 pounds. I think it's fair to say he's been like that for a while. And the longer you leave it, the more time out of the ring, the harder it's going to be to get down to that weight. In my opinion, anyway. At least that's what most people would say, and I wouldn't be surprised that's the case for Josh Taylor as well. So that's Josh Taylor. In terms of, as I said, Eubank versus Smith, great fight. I'd like to see it. There's really nowhere else for Liam Smith, or really, realistically, Chris Eubank, because who does Liam Smith have at 154 pounds? Most of the all the titles are over in PBC. So even if he was with Boxer or DAZN, where is he going to go? At middleweight, again, realistically, where the hell are you going to go other than have domestic dusts up? I mean, if he loses to Eubank, I guess you could potentially do Williams versus Smith 3, but that's an undercard fight though. That's not a feature fight. I don't think at this stage anyway. Could be wrong, but I wouldn't say it's a feature fight. Certainly not at this stage anyway. Now, here's a fight that I'm interested in. David Benavidez versus Jose... not this fight, by the way, but the fight after I'm going to talk about now in a sec. Benavidez versus Usyk, that got scrapped. That got scrapped due to backlash from the fans. Thank God for that, because I didn't want to see that fight. Yeah, Usyk had a good run. 2017 was his best run, really. He was mandatory for James DeGale. He had the win. Well, he had a disqualification loss over Durrell. Then he obviously avenged that. And then he was mandatory for DeGale. DeGale ended up... Did he vacate? Or did he retire? Not sure. Can't remember now. But cut a long story short, he ended up picking up a title, lost to Caleb Plant, failed the drugs test going into the first purported date for Benavidez. Can't remember what he failed for, but he failed. And, obviously Benavidez has had his own issues with the whole how you doing. So this was going to be a clash of two drug cheats, and I didn't want to see it. I would have watched it, but I didn't want to see it. So that fight got binned. It's now reported that Caleb Plant has declared he signed a contract, I should say, to fight Dave Benavidez, because Benavidez versus Plant was reportedly in the works, and Caleb Plant has said that, yep, he signed his end. Benavidez reportedly signed his end. So it's claimed that this fight taking place at super middleweight could happen in January. I like this fight. I would be favouring David Benavidez massively. I really would. I think that Caleb Plant, he's a decent fighter. He's right up there, one of the best in the division. But I think that Benavidez will just be able to outpressure him. I don't know. Look, Caleb Plant had a good knockout in his last fight against Anthony Durrell. But, realistically, Caleb Plant, he's not noted as being a devastating puncher. I can't see him being able to keep Dave Benavidez off him. I've always been impressed with Dave Benavidez in terms of what he brings to the table, in terms of skill, his attributes in the ring. Discipline has been his Achilles heel. whether it be missing weight by a couple of pounds and looking fleshy in the ring, whether it would be outside of camp, failing the drugs test for the old how you doing, those kind of things, you just don't want to see them, and they've been his issues. So hopefully now Benavidez, I mean, he's been stripped of his title twice. You know, this is a guy who's a two-time, I think he's a WBC both times, two-time champion at 168 pounds, never lost title, been stripped both times, missed weight, and failed drugs test. It's not a good look. For someone who is as talented as I believe Benavidez is, it's not a good look. But I think in this fight against Caleb Plant, if and when it takes place, hopefully in January, we'll see the best Benavidez. And personally, I think he beats Caleb Plant. Just my opinion, I personally think he does beat him. I really do. Now, here's a good fight. Here is a very, very good fight, and I hope to God this fight gets made. The WBO have ruled that the winner of Kazuto Ioka versus Joshua Franco for their WBA and WBO Super Flyweight unification fight, which is going to happen on New Year's Eve. Always in Japan, they do them New Year's Eve shows, and they're always good. I cannot think of a New Year's Eve show, because they do them seemingly, they do pretty much every year. I can't think of a New Year's Eve show in Japan that hasn't been good. They've always been good. Always. The winner will have to face Yunto Nakatani. Oh, yeah, Nakatani is one of my favourite fighters. I love watching him. I think Kazuto Ioka wins this fight, but against Nakatani, as much as it pains me to say because I love watching Kazuto Ioka, pains me to say I don't think he's beaten Nakatani. I really don't. I don't think he's beaten him. Now, Klimas, who was the manager of Alexander Usyk, has said that significant progress has been made in his potential fight with Tyson Fury next year. He says everything is done from our side, everything. So it's only one guy who can say, yes, we're going. That is Tyson Fury. So Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. I'm also seeing here, which is ID Boxing reporting, that no earlier than February the 18th of next year and no later than March the 4th. Right, so Undisputed is seemingly good to go for next year. Now, personally for me, I'd rather just see this fight get over the line and both guys go into the fight next. I know Tyson Fury has his fight with Chisora. I just could not care anymore for that fight. You know, if it was non-title, I wouldn't mind it as much. I still wouldn't care for it, but oh Jesus, pay-per-view, really? I mean, it's a run out. But at the end of the day, I just don't see why Fury, because at the end of the day, right, I could understand Fury if he said, I'd like a run out before I fight Usyk, and he fights someone who is somewhat stylistically similar, but with Chisora, it's like the polar opposite. Maybe height-wise, yeah, but like Usyk is not going to pressure like Chisora. He's not going to loop shots. He's not going to swing. It's not southpaw. Chisora's obviously orthodox. It's just the polar opposite. So I just don't get this fight. But in terms of Usyk versus Fury, look, I want to see Undisputed. That's always been my preference in any division, specifically heavyweight, because my favorite division. I want to see Undisputed. We've never had a 4-belt champion. It's been 23 years since we've had an undisputed champion in heavyweight, which was Lennox Lewis, and I want to see one. I think we've waited long enough, and I think next year will be the time where we get that. I really do. I think we'll see Undisputed next year. In terms of who I think wins the fight, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I will be edging Fury to beat Alexander Usyk. You know, I think that Fury is tremendously talented. He's great at adjusting. You know, with Fury could get into a boxing match with Usyk, and if it's not going well, unlike Anthony Joshua, who just decides, well, let's keep trying and hope something sticks, he's going to say, right, this isn't working, swap it up. You know, he can change it on the fly. Joshua is just like, just keep boxing and hope the judges give it to me. That's kind of the way I got it, looking at it from both fights, how he was, because he did everything wrong in both fights. And I think with Fury, I think Fury can adjust better. And I think if he adjusts, he'll be able to take this fight. So Fury for this fight is currently my pick. Now that might change, you never know, closer to the fight. But right now, I think Tyson Fury beats Alexander Usyk if they fight next year. In terms of next year, Joshua said on DAZN Boxing, I was supposed to be in the ring this year. I'm going to be in the ring next year. I'll be in the ring when I'm in the ring. I don't want to make any statements today, then get held to the cross by it. When I'm ready, I'll be back. Arnold Schwarzenegger there. Yeah, so obviously Anthony Joshua, they were talking about having him out on December the 17th. Obviously not going to happen now. The Fury fight, obviously the talks with there broke down. So they're looking to get him out next year, early next year, February, March, more than likely. You know, I said it once, I'll say it again. I wonder if Joshua has any regrets signing this deal with DAZN and Matchroom, because at the end of the day, I fully think that Joshua needs to come back to a couple of levels below. You know, the Chris Ariolas of the world, people like that. The problem is that you'll never be able to put them fights on pay-per-view and make any kind of money or make any kind of profit realistically. So they're looking to match him with guys like Dillian Whyte, Oliver Lane, to bring him along that way. Now, that's a step down from the Usyks of the world, of course it is, but Oliver Lane is tough. Dillian Whyte is not as tough, but still pretty damn tough. And Eddie Hearn even told reporters that his next fight will likely take place in March. The winner of Whyte Franklin is the front runner. Again, like, I would be picking Dillian Whyte against Franklin, but you know, Dillian Whyte is definitely, I see him as live in there against Joshua, or at the very least dangerous with the left hook. I certainly see that. I see him as dangerous with the left hook. So we'll wait and see. At the end of the day, we need to see how Dillian Whyte looks against Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine Franklin, to me, as I've said before, has never looked amazing, so I can't imagine even if Dillian Whyte is shop-worn. I don't necessarily think Dillian Whyte is going to be shop-worn, truth be told. I think his punch resistance is just gone. I don't think he's physically regressed, you know, in terms of his physical ability. I just think that his punch resistance is just gone. That's pretty much it. So that's what I think of that. In terms of some of the other things, Eddie Hearn said that he suggested they could do a rematch with Canelo and Bivol, but they could do it at 168 pounds, and then Bivol, if he wins, go back up to light heavyweight and try and make undisputed. Now, if he does all that in 2023, that's all you can do. He wins. I don't know what he wins, but he wins, because that is pretty damn incredible. I mean, just think of it like this, right? If he wins those fights, he'll have beaten Canelo, Ramirez, Canelo again, and Beterbiev. Undisputed, 2 weight divisions, back-to-back fights. That's pretty incredible if he does that. I mean, we are seriously talking. If that does happen, we're talking about some serious, you know, serious praise if he does that. Do I think he'll do that? Look, I don't know. I don't know if Canelo will take the rematch at this stage. But at the end of the day, where is there to go? Obviously, at the end of the day, he could go and take a fight on PBC. He could sign a contract, a 2-fight deal with there, if that's still an option. Because, you know, obviously Charlo is there. Fight Charlo at 168 pounds, put your titles on the line. And then obviously you have the all-Mexican affair with Benavidez. Wait and see how the light heavyweight landscape looks when you have those 2 fights. As, you know, Tunde says, timing is everything. You never know. Bivol could go in there against Beterbiev. He could beat him, but he could look absolutely terrible in it. Or he could go through hellfire and brimstone to beat Artur Beterbiev, and Canelo will think, right, well, I'll have you in a few months and you won't be recovered, so let's go. You never know. So Alvarez versus Bivol, I'd be surprised if we see a rematch, because I think Canelo, regardless of what improvements he makes, he's going to struggle. He's really going to struggle against Bivol. That style is just going to cause him problems. Unless he has absolutely corrupt judges, then I just can't see anything other than the Bivol win. And Canelo, as I said, he's too muscly. He's put on too much muscle for these weights, and it's crippling his stamina. You know, Canelo back down to 154 pounds had poor stamina because he was draining himself massively to get down to that weight. I think now he's got poor stamina because he's just putting too much muscle on, and it's not helping him. And his body, yeah, he's naturally quite a muscly, thick-set fella, but not this muscly. So I think that's having an impact on Canelo's stamina as well. So we shall wait and see what happens there with Canelo Alvarez and Dmitry Bivol. But I wouldn't be shocked if he decides to have a few fights on PBC next year, maybe a Charlo and Benavidez, and see how that goes. I think that's pretty much all the news we have. Yeah, I think that's pretty much, I think we covered most of it. So I will leave you with that. I've got plenty on this week in terms of plans for videos, a lot coming this week. In terms of everything else, I hope you all have a great week. I hope everyone is, keeping good, keeping safe, keeping happy. We're coming into Christmas now, so I hope everyone is getting that money in, because obviously you got to get the presents in. But in terms of everything else, I hope, as I always say in review of the week, I hope everyone has a good week. I hope the phone rings for me, you, everyone included, with some good news. At least someone gets it. And yeah, we see how it goes. You never know what can happen in any given time, any given day. That's what I got to say. So when you go into a week, go into a bit of optimism. You can't stop the world from turning. Sometimes you just got to turn with it. And hopefully things get better. If anyone's listening to that and things are going a bit, hopefully it gets better. For now, I will leave you with that. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't as well. Smash the like button, hit the notification bell. For now, lads and lassies, I will talk. You have a great week. Peace.